Welcome back to the Rabbi and the Other Guy. See, I
How?
remember to say it this time because you always tell me I forget.
Yeah, you do, but it's good. I'm impressed, and
Okay.
especially since you're coming off like a major sports weekend. So give us an update, Anderson baseball. I know you had your baseball banquet yesterday here at the J, but
We did. It was
what's
nice.
happening next?
So we are on to round 4. It's like super exciting. So it's the regional finals. We are playing Barbers Hill, which is a school that's east of Baytown, like almost to Beaumont. Um,
That means they're
so
in. That means they're in the swamp. I mean, I don't know
yeah,
where.
well, we're meeting halfway. So we play game 1 will be Thursday at 3 o'clock in Weimar. This won't be live before then, so people won't be able to join us, but you can find it other places. And then 2 games potentially on Saturday in Waller, Texas, which is where the
Mm.
Buc-ee's is on 290. So that's good stuff. We're the first AISD team to make it this far since 2002, when none of these boys were born. And the
That's
first Anderson
crazy.
team to make it this far since 1989, when the team went to the state finals.
That's
So it's really
amazing.
exciting. It's exciting for these boys. I spent way more time in my car than I needed to this week, going out to Mumford, Texas, which is a beautiful facility in the middle of cornfields. It feels like Field of Dreams to some extent. And they won the final game. They won 2-1 in a walk-off in the bottom of the 7th. So it's been really exciting. Proud of the boys. It's been awesome. So yeah, that was busy all weekend with that. The banquet was wonderful last night at the J. It's the first time we've had a banquet where we were still playing. I don't know if you've seen any of the boys, but they've all bleached their hair.
Oh,
Which I think
I
is a thing.
saw a Facebook picture of them walking out with the cheerleaders cheering, them into the parking lot to the
Yeah.
bus.
So it's exciting. So it's really fun for them. So hopefully we've got 6 more wins in us if we can figure that one out. This team's going to be tough. This team I think that we're playing is like ranked number 3 or number 4 in the state. We're now up to 21, although that should go up. I think the new coaches poll comes out tomorrow or maybe Wednesday, so we should go up. So it's been a great run.
Is Bel Air High School still a ranked team in the state? They used to be like number 1 nationally for years.
I haven't seen. I don't even. They're 6A, right?
They're 6A, I think. Yeah, and when I was a freshman, I want to say, or maybe I was in 8th grade, they had like 4 or 5 future Major League Baseball players on their
Oh wow,
team.
yeah, no, I
Jose
don't think they're that good anymore.
Jose Cruz Jr. and Bubba Crosby and all these guys that went on to play, like a lot of them on the New York Yankees originally, or Toronto Blue Jay. It was unbelievable. They were so good. They were unstoppable for a few years. But
Yeah,
that was
I
Bel
don't
Air
think they're that
baseball.
good. If we had a research assistant, we could have somebody look it up for us right now, but we don't. So I'll look it up afterwards. Um, but yeah, it's been exciting. Busy weekend. Both my mom and her husband were in town. Kim's parents were in town, so it was busy. But now it's Monday morning, and we're sort of back to work. Sort
We
of.
are. We're definitely about to work.
All right, should we bring in Louie? We're excited to
Let's
have
bring in
him.
Loui.
All right, there you are, Louie.
Hey,
Welcome.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Louis is the former camp director of the Reform Urban's URJ Greene Family Camp in Bruceville, Texas. He actually joined it in 1978, retired as the executive director in 2020, came back out of retirement to guide the 14 camps of URJ National Camping System through their COVID response reopening in 2021. While in Texas, he became a licensed EMT and served at the local volunteer ambulance service for 35 years and as a licensed private pilot. That's kind of cool. He received his BA from NYU in 1975, probably not really welcome there anymore. But prior to moving to Texas, he was also a fundraising founding member of the Jewish music group Kol Beseder. You can see his guitars behind him. Created songs Nifty Sings record while singing in high school and college. During his post-college years, he founded and operated a New York-based recording company. He was also the program director of Eisner Camp in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He's married to Sheila. They come from Houston. He has 2 married sons, Zachary and Jonathan, and a granddaughter, Clara. Louis, welcome to the show.
It is great to be here. Great to be here. I'm just a little bit north of you right now in Temple, Texas.
Yeah, all right. Closer to Bruceville for you. That's convenient.
Closer to Bruceville. Exactly.
All right. So tell me how a Jewish guy from New York ends up, in Texas becoming a camp director. What's the journey that brought you here?
Well, it really wasn't on my dance card when I was growing up, to move to Texas and become a camp director. But in essence, what happened was I had worked at the Eisner camp when I was a kid. I had been in Nifty in the Long Island part of Nifty all through high school, and then went to work at camp. And after college graduation, and after running a business, they were looking for somebody to come down to Texas and kind of be the assistant director. And while I was here, they liked me because I had a business background as well as a camping background. They kind of liked me and asked me to stay. I said, yeah, I could stay for a year, maybe 2 years. I was living on the Upper West Side, but here I am. It's 50 years later, and I'm still down here, still involved with the camp, although not employed by the camp. And it's been a heck of a journey. One wife and two kids, and later, and here I still am. So that's how I
So,
got involved.
that's not typical. I grew up in New York too. You probably knew that. But it's not typical for a guy living on the Upper West Side to be searching it was probably classified ads back then, right? Nothing online for a assistant camp director in Texas. So, like, how does that even pop up on your radar?
Well, it didn't pop up on my radar. What happened was they were looking, and my friend was the assistant director of camping at the time. And he said, well, Louie's not doing anything. I had just sold my business. And they said, Louie's not doing anything. He'd love to go down there for a summer and kind of straighten things out. So they sent me, or didn't send me, but they said, we have this opportunity. You want to do it? And I said, yeah, I'll go down there for a little while. It sounded interesting. I'd
Uh,
never really been to Texas at that point. And I drove here. I drove to Texas from the Upper West Side of Manhattan, got in my car at West 68th in Columbus, and got out of my car in Bruceville Eddy. Talk
wow.
about a culture shift.
I mean, that is a cult. How long did it take you? Do
Yeah.
you remember?
36 hours. I didn't really stop. I just drank a lot of coffee.
By yourself?
Yeah. Solo down here in my Plymouth Duster.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not recommended how you do it nowadays. If any kids are listening, by the way, any Greene family
Yeah,
kids,
no,
drive
you don't want to
36
try
hours.
this at home. You don't want to try this at home.
There's a very different song now on what kind of car goes to Greene Family Camp, right, Louis?
Yeah, it's bring your Lexus to Bruceville, Texas. Follow
Exactly.
me to GFC.
We live in a very different time.
Went
And
from
Louis
the
drives,
Plymouth Duster to the Lexus. That's
and
right.
Louis now drives well, you still drive the Corvette?
No, when I moved to part-time to Colorado, the Corvette just wasn't the car to have. So, like everyone else in Colorado, now I drive a Subaru.
Oh, Daniel drives a Subaru. Look at you two in common.
No.
Yeah.
Talia drives the Subaru now. I
Oh,
drive
yeah.
a Volkswagen ID4.
Oh, how
Mm.
environmentally conscious of you.
Well,
Now that I'm retired, I might go back to a Corvette. I don't know. But Corvettes in Colorado, you just don't see many of them. They don't make it up the mountains that easily.
no,
Well,
not at all.
not in the snow for sure. All
No,
right, so you come
no.
down for your first summer. It's 1978. You
Mhm.
figured you're going to do this for a summer, go back to New York, and never be back in Texas again. And then what happens?
Well, then what happened was what I didn't know at the time was that Rabbi Larry Jakovsky of blessed memory, who was the camp director at the time, was about to become the regional director for the Union for Reform Judaism, and the camp directorship was going to be open. And one of the URJ actually had somebody slotted to take that job, but the camp committee said they wanted me. So they told the URJ, we want Louis to stay. And I said, okay, I'll stay a couple of years. Then I met my wife. And as you know, Texas girls don't like to leave Texas. So here I am,
So when
So
you
that's kind of what happened. I
Right.
fell into it. Life,
Nope.
John Lennon said it best. Life is what happens when you're making other plans. That's what happened.
That's
um,
great.
That's a great story. So when you took the full-time job as the camp director, did you move to Texas full-time then? Because that's not just a summer gig.
And yeah, that was a full-time gig. I had to pack up the duster and move down to Texas and moved to Dallas for a year, lived in Dallas for a year, and then I moved to camp. So I didn't have to pay rent and could save up the money to get my pilot's license. So I
Mm.
lived in camp for a couple of years. And then my wife got a postdoc back in Dallas. So she went up to Dallas to do her postdoc, and we lived there for a couple of years. And then she got her postdoc, and we moved down to Bruceville Eddy, where there is no place for a geneticist to actually work as a geneticist. So she tried to get a job teaching biology in the local area. But believe it or not, a PhD in science does not qualify you to teach biology in Texas. You need
Really?
a Texas teaching certificate. So so as a PhD geneticist, she got a job at a private school teaching biology. And then we went back up to, I don't remember really what happened after that. We moved here and moved there and ended up living in Bruceville Eddy and living after that in Temple, Texas. She got appointed to the medical staff of Baylor Scott and White. It wasn't Baylor Scott and White at the time. It was just plain old Scott and White.
Yep.
And now it's Baylor Scott and White, and she ran their genetics laboratory for a lot of her career, and she also recently retired.
Wow. Okay, so that's a great story. Now you're living partially in Colorado.
Yeah, our son, who trained as an emergency room doc, got a job in Colorado and then had a grandbaby. And you need quality time with your kids, but more than that, you need quantity time. And we weren't going to get that quantity time if we stayed here and they were up there. So we bought a house in Manitou Springs, which is right next to Colorado Springs,
Yep.
and lived there for a couple of months at a time. We
Well, that's
alternate
awesome.
between here and there.
That's awesome. All right, let's get to camps. I want to read something. I don't know if you listen to Dan Sonora's podcast or whatnot, but he had recently did the State of World Jewelry, where he did a thing at the 92nd Street Y, our old hometown, Louis.
Mhm.
And if you didn't listen to it, I highly recommend listening to it. But I want to read an excerpt from it because I thought it was particularly telling given what we're recording today. So he's talking about American Jewry, and he talked about Jewish day schools. And then he goes on to say, there's only one environment in America that's even more immersive than day schools, the Jewish summer camp. Jewish camps have a similarly profound impact. One survey showed that 92% of parents said it directly strengthened their child's Jewish identity. Participation is growing too, as families double down on their Jewish identities amid rising anti-Semitism. Last summer, 189,000 kids, teens, and young adults attended Jewish camps, a 5% increase over 2023. Camp is not just a seasonal touch point, it's frequently the beginning of a lifelong Jewish journey. And yet, despite everything we know about the value of Jewish camp, it remains dramatically underfunded. Costs are rising. Jewish overnight camp alone costs $500 million annually, but philanthropic giving to camps has not kept pace. So I don't know if you'd heard that before, Louis, but
Well, I could not agree more. And there is an irony to this situation. And the irony is that when Jewish summer camping started 100 years ago or more, the job was, the Jewish community was ghettoized in urban areas. And the children of immigrants really didn't know how to be American. So the Jewish summer camp business started by bringing those kids out into the country and teaching them baseball and teaching them slang and teaching them what it took to be an American kid. And they were turning Jews into Americans, right? Nowadays, the Jewish summer camp industry exists to turn American kids back into Jews. So that's, an incredible irony about the roots of the movement and how it has evolved into what it is today. Because, even if you're in a big town like Austin, um, you're not going to a school that's predominantly Jewish. You're going to a school where your culture has to fit into the holiday schedule, the weekly schedule of the predominant culture in which you're living. And camp is a place where you live on Jewish time. You don't live on secular time. You have Shabbat on Friday night and Saturday morning. You don't have it Sunday morning. Everything is closed on Saturday. It's not everything is closed on Sunday. You're living in an environment somewhat like Israel, where the very air you breathe is Jewish. I mean, in Jewish summer camp, the very air you breathe is Jewish. And it enables you to make Jewish memory that other environments, no matter how much they try, no matter how good your synagogue religious school is, no matter how good your day school is, you're still going home and you're back in the environment in which you were before you went to that Jewish place. And at camp, it's not like that. I mean, camp is the Shabbat of the year, right? For our kids, camp is the Shabbat of the year. It's the time that you're in a different time and place and space and all of that. So I, of course, agree there is no better place to retain Jewish identity and to create Jewish community than an immersive environment like summer camp.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize the statistics were this impressive, right? 92% directly strengthen their child's Jewish identity. I also didn't realize the magnitude, like nearly 200,000 kids
Hmm.
are
Yeah.
attending. I
Well,
mean,
Jewish summer camp is a thing. I mean, long before there was Christian summer camp, there was Jewish summer camp. And the reason was because we needed to create that environment that was 100% immersively Jewish. There were other reasons too, but that was a big reason.
yeah, it's interesting. This number doesn't even include, my daughter goes to Birch Trail, which I don't know if you've heard of. It's in northern Wisconsin. My son went to North Star, which is 30 minutes away. Neither one of them would be qualified as a Jewish camp. They don't do, Shabbat and whatnot, but
Mhm.
98% of the kids at both of the camps are Jewish. Blue Star, I think, is the same. Daniel, you probably know better than me, but Blue Star in North Carolina, I think the same way. You wouldn't call it a Jewish camp. So that number, which I didn't think was anywhere near that high, is actually probably underestimating the number of
Yeah.
kids who go to like Jewish style camps, like Katz's Deli's Jewish style now. It's not.
Well, it's there are Jewish camps and camps for Jewish kids, right? Your kids go to camps for Jewish kids. I was just at a bat mitzvah in Houston that was a twinned bat mitzvah, and the person I was there to celebrate came out of Greene Family Camp, but the other girl came out of a private girls' camp in God knows where, somewhere up north where it's cool during the summer. And her entire bunk flew in for that. And they all knew the prayers, and it wasn't from their synagogue. It was from growing up in a camp for Jewish kids, as opposed to a Jewish camp.
Well, yeah, I have a great story. I think I've told it on the podcast before, but one of the girls who went to Emily's camp, a camp for Jewish kids, right? Um,
Mhm.
the older sister was not bat mitzvahed because it wasn't important to the parents at the time. It's one Jewish parent, one non-Jewish parent. But she went to camp at a younger age, earlier, right? Since she was, I think, 7 or 8, and she saw all of her kids, all of her friends get their bat mitzvahs, and she decided she wanted to be bat mitzvahed. And so she had a bat mitzvah because of camp.
Well, I'll give you a corollary to that story that's even more impressive about the impact of Jewish summer camp. Is I'm not sure you're aware, but a lot of our camps bring over the Israel Scout troop,
I've
that
heard that,
sings and
yes.
dances. We kind of call it Israel on ice. It's not. They don't skate, but it could be. So it's a bunch of really cute Israeli, teens that go around and teach Israel and impress you with Israel. And Shalom Austin may have had them. I'm not sure. They do JCCs and stuff like that.
We do
And
every year.
they're Hiloni Israelis. They're secular Israelis. And so we get a call after the summer one year that wants to know what we did to them because they got back to Israel and all of a sudden want to do Havdalah. You know, they these are kids didn't know from anything like that before they went through the Jewish summer camps. And now all of a sudden, these Israeli secular Jews want to be involved in Jewish ritual in a way that their parents just weren't quite ready for. So it was really interesting, the impact of the camp.
That is interesting. And isn't it part of this, like, making it fun? Because there's nothing fun about Hebrew school at all. And there's really not a lot fun about services either. But like Jewish camps make it being Jewish fun.
There are lots of levels to that question. One level is certainly that we make it fun. Another level is that we make it meaningful. Another level is that we make it cool, because, no matter how cool a rabbi is, he's not as cool as an 18-year-old counselor, and you get the role modeling impact of kids who are kind of mirroring the behavior of people that they think are cool, so you have that layer to it. Another layer to it is, it's, when you sit in services in a synagogue, no matter how good those services are, a lot of times they're not made intentionally meaningful. You have to put the meaning in. It's like Marshall McLuhan's hot media and cold media. You have to put the meaning in when you're in a synagogue. In a camp, we are teaching you the meaning. It's affective education. It's feeling stuff as well as just knowing stuff. And then you're sitting there and all your friends are around you and the sun is setting and it's beautiful out, and all of those things makes it a lot different than an indoor situation where you're reading from a prayer book, because you've written the prayers, in a lot of cases. You can resonate to the music in a different way. It's different on lots of levels.
And Loui, so you've been involved in overnight camping for over 50 years, and we'll talk in a second about Greene Family Camp and its 50th. As you're talking about the influence of overnight camping, Jewish overnight camping, where does that, it doesn't just influence, as you were just saying, about the Israeli community that comes to camp. And you have shlichim, right? These ambassadors that come every year by like the dozens, right? Into all of our Jewish camps throughout North America, and I know around the world. But locally, how does it impact the kids when they get back in the families? And how has Jewish overnight camping influenced synagogue life? Because I've seen it drastically. I mean, didn't the musical movement that you referenced, or we referenced in your bio, influence synagogue life? Didn't it come out of Jewish overnight camping, that when the services changed and became more camp style, for example?
Yeah. So when I was in 7th grade, my dad, who was a Reform rabbi, had to get the ritual committee to vote to allow a guitar on the pulpit. Now, it doesn't seem like you can get a job in a synagogue unless you play the guitar and song lead or do something like that. The Hebrew Union College's School of Sacred Music that trains cantors is now the Debbie Friedman School of Sacred Music. Debbie was one of the primo songwriters of modern Jewish liturgy. The Songs Nifty Sings record album series that I started when I was in high school as the Nifty treasurer, because we needed a fundraising project. I mean, those things we thought might sell $100 worth of record albums. Now tens of thousands of them have been sold. And those help to bring camp music out of camps into synagogues. But the real thing that helped bring that music out of camp and into synagogues were the kids who said, we want this, not necessarily that. And it was a huge reaction technologically to the fact that music was now shareable, even more so now with the internet. But even in those days, you could share your music in a way that you couldn't earlier, when you needed tens of thousands of dollars in a studio and pressing records. All of a sudden, through cassettes and things like that, this music was shareable. And once it became shareable, it became what would have been now considered viral. Maybe then it would have been called bacterial, because it didn't spread quite as fast. But it spread that way through the kids, through the fact that everyone was writing music and distributing music. Every little kid could write a Jewish setting to Michamocha and and have his friend sing it. And all of that kind of creativity, musical creativity, was finding its way into the synagogue. And interestingly enough, now, when you go into a Jewish synagogue, especially a Reformed Jewish synagogue, what you find is primarily camp music interspersed with, and this isn't true in some of our larger shuls necessarily, but in many temples, you have a definite rise in Jewish folk music, or what would be folk rock music, and now even other other Jewish music taking other musical forms. But yeah, it's had a major impact. First of all, it's had a major impact because a huge percentage of the rabbinic school are now camp veterans. I mean, we provide we're the main pipeline for Jewish professionals in America right now. And by right now, I mean 5 years ago, because I've been retired for a few years. But when I retired, the bargain that we made with HUC was we sent them all of our kids, and that was the bargain. I'm still waiting for the bargain in the other direction. We have a lot of Jewish professionals from our synagogues that come to camp as faculty, and certainly Rabbi Septimus is, primo among them. We have like tons of them, but HUC has never made it a point to require camp attendance for their students. It would be wonderful if they did. We'd have even more wonderful unit heads and everything else, but there's never been the requirement for people in the Jewish professional schools to go to camp for the summer. So you have a lot of rabbis at synagogues that when all of these camp kids hit that synagogue, it's kind of a shock, in a way, because they've never been in camp. Especially these days, as the profile of Jewish clergy changes a little bit. But we send a plurality of the students to rabbinic school.
You do.
Five years ago.
I don't think that's surprising.
It's not surprising. But Loui, I would also contend that the camping movement, the Jewish camping movement, has changed even on a religious level, not just a musical level. So, I mean, am I correct, Loui, that like Tisha B'Av, which is a very traditional 9th of Av, was originally rejected by the Reform movement, this mourning for the destruction of the temples and other things that really the Jewish camping movement in some ways resurrected the holiday and gave it new meaning. And then it kind of started to come back into synagogues, especially Reform, obviously within conservative and Orthodox. But my understanding that came from, the URJ camps in some ways.
It really did, because of two different things. One is because of the thoughtful nature of support for Israel, and things like that, but also because of calendric considerations. It's the only holiday we get. We
You can take some from September. September has too many. Why don't you
they
take
have plenty in
one or two?
September. We even miss Shavuot, So what we have left is Tisha B'Av, and it enables us, other than the holidays we make up, like Yom Yisrael and things like that. It's the only traditional Jewish holiday available to us. Plus, it enables us to balance the ridiculous happiness of camp, and with a serious look at Jewish history. And as a warning, in a way, that Jewish history isn't always cheerful and wonderful and great. And,
Really?
you can put, yeah.
You didn't tell me
And
this.
nowadays it looks like we might be getting back to that. But, Tisha B'Av could be a little vaccination against thinking that everything is always great. in Jewish life.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know that's a buzzkill, but
no,
it's true.
it's true, and I think it's important to teach that history, even though it's such joy in camp. You got plenty of joy in camp, and there's
Hmm.
opportunity to and to provide a setting where you can really process it in a meaningful way. It's hard to do that when you're kind of in your day to day life inside synagogues or other spaces of worship. Um, in the same way you can do it at camp. And I mean, Matt didn't mention this earlier, but just like my brother, because I have to mention my brother in every podcast, Louis, otherwise he feels left out. But
Well, he's a camp doctor, so
the camp
you got
doctor,
to
well,
mention him.
Oh,
Matt's
I'm a
been a
camp
camp
doctor.
doctor. Yeah, so
Oh,
Matt's
yeah?
a camp doctor,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's had an influence on you, Matt, going up to camp every summer for your
Yes,
your
I'm much
kids.
better at killing mice now, or at least catching them.
Are you a pediatrician, or do you just?
No, I'm an anesthesiologist that treats pain, but being a camp doctor is like generally being a parent that has prescriptive authority, right?
Exactly. That I was just going to say. You don't need to be. You become a pediatrician a little bit when you're in camp.
I
First of
mean,
all, the nurses teach you a lot.
to be fair, my wife is a psychologist, so she actually does a lot more camp doctoring than I do because I've learned that week 1 is the best week. So that's the week I chose. I have seniority now. I've been going. This is my 10th year. I think this is my 10th year. It
Wow.
might be my 9th year of being a camp doctor. So I get to choose my week, and I chose week 1 because they're not, nobody's tired, no one's too like whatever, so I don't have to deal with the fake orthopedic injuries because they want to sit in the air conditioning. But my wife is a psychologist, so she deals with homesickness week 1, and then for me, I just sit back and relax. Like nothing really goes
Yeah.
bad by week 1.
That's
There's
great.
a strep throat. One kid always has lice, but
my
like other than
brother-
that, it's like
My
easy.
brother used to come into the last week, and he learned the hard way that that's not the best week.
Well,
to
that's
go
the worst
to a
week.
camp doctor. And I won't go into one summer that Louis and my brother and I, and we were all, had a challenging summer, which a number of Jewish camps did. But that is the week that all the kids get injured. The counselors are exhausted. It's
like
hard.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Did you have a
now he
norovirus
comes.
summer?
Do what?
Excuse me?
Did you have a norovirus summer? Is that what you're referring to?
Oh, yes, we did. We did.
And
Yeah,
Louis
we did
did
not have that.
brilliantly.
I had impetigo. That was my worst outbreak.
Oh, no, we've had a few. Camp is a great. It's a petri dish, as
Yeah.
you know, and but we won't talk about those because those happen at every camp, so they all zero out.
They all zero out. They all do. And
It happens at every camp. I mean,
Louis probably
the
knows
kids laugh about the impetigo year. So there's a funny story. I was a camp doctor week 5, visiting weekends between week 4 and week 5. Right. This is way back when you only wanted to go for visiting weekend and then I could stay, so I only had to travel once. And one of the I'm sitting at a restaurant in Hayward, Wisconsin, and one of the parents is like, "Hey, can you look at this rash on my kid?" They told them, that there's this allergic rash going around. I'm like, okay, well, allergic rashes don't go around because allergies aren't contagious. But okay, I'll take a look. And I look, and I'm like, oh, well, that's impetigo. You need medicine for that. And they're like, what? We were told it was an allergic rash. And I was like, well, okay. And then I called the camp director and I was like, hey, Gabe, like, what's this allergic rash going on? He goes, so yeah, it came around week 3. And like the week 3 doctor, the week 4 doctor goes, seems to be getting worse. I'm like, oh, you have an impetigo outbreak. So by week 5,
yeah.
I had more mupirocin going around, like smearing it on every kid. And we got rid of it. It was, but it's like, and now the kids laugh about it, the impetigo year.
While Louis was dealing with not the norovirus outbreak, but one of the flu outbreaks that was, I think, brought Louis from South America to the camp early. It wasn't supposed to be in North America, but I think one of your South American staff brought it. My dad, the infectious diseases doctor, got very, very excited, which is not great for the kids. They're suffering, but he's excited to present it at his weekly rounds. So he can say the first outbreak of this flu variant is at Greene Family Camp in Bruceville, Texas.
It's okay. And the internet had just come out, and we pioneered a thing where parents could check a website to see if their child was ill or not.
Oh, God. That can't have gone well.
I forgot about that.
A ton of Jewish moms hitting refresh as fast as they possibly could.
Now it's for the photos. They hit refresh,
They
refresh,
yeah.
do.
refresh,
And if
refresh.
you
I
don't,
think that's
and
the
Louis
worst
knows
thing that overnight camps ever did was the photos.
the photos.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and if
I know you can't go back, but
when I go on faculty, as Louis says, I'm not coming this summer, but I've gone almost every summer since I started. Actually, I have since I started as a rabbi, except for, of course, the year that camp was sadly closed because of COVID. But I would get text messages at least 5 times to 6 times a summer, like, "Hey, can you check in and see if my kid's okay? I haven't seen my kid in any pictures." I said, "It's probably having fun, or she's having fun, and she doesn't want to be in the pictures."
well, see,
Or,
we have terrible cell service in Wisconsin, so my phone doesn't work all week. It's
There you
great.
go. Yep. That's a
but
that's a that's a benefit. We
so
were talking before we got sidetracked into into this.
Camp
We
pandemics.
I had mentioned thoughtful support for Israel, and Dan had said had mentioned the shlichim who come every summer. And one of the incredible things about camp are those shlichim, because they're not only coming as the cool kids, but they're also coming to present a real picture of Israel to the campers. What's more important than that is, as I used to tell them when I trained them in Israel before they came, that their real shlichut isn't to the kids, it's not to the campers, it's to the staff. Because the staff are the people who are on campus trying to deal with the Israel issues on campus. And the staff are the people that are about to become the congressmen and businessmen and influencers in the American Jewish community. And I think that one thing that we should talk about as we're talking about camp is the impact that it has on the staff that work there, and who those people are that actually dedicate their summer to earning less than they could earn somewhere else and coming to camp to be staff members. Because it's getting harder and harder to find them. American kids are very goal oriented, and their parents are always pushing them into, what do they need to do to get into medical school or law school or something like that, rather than pushing them into a job that's going to train them in the kind of life skills they need to be successful in those occupations and to be good parents and good Jews. I mean, because being a staff member happens during the hiatus between high school, when they're still under control of all of us in a way, and marriage, where they're having children and deciding that they want their kids to be Jewish. There's that whole big period of time where they are out of the Jewish community. Not only are they out of the Jewish community, but they're in a community that is actively agitating for them to remain out of the Jewish community in a way. They're meeting kids who aren't Jewish, who they're going to marry, who have their own set of expectations for a family. And when kids come to camp as staff members, they're coming to camp in adulthood, or about to be adult. Their frontal lobe has finally started solidifying, and when they come to camp,
Not for the boys.
not only not only can they have an impact on all those campers we've been talking about, but they can have an impact on themselves. And all of those Israeli kids can have an impact on them. And as we talked about with the scouts, they can have an impact on the Israeli kids. And there are European kids that are now on staff, and they're all in this huge mishmash of 18 to 21-year-olds that are having a big impact on each other within a Jewish environment. And I don't think it can be stressed enough how important that is to the Jewish community.
I was going to say that is a really important point. I thought you were going to go originally was that the Israelis go back to Israel with a new understanding of what it means to be a diaspora Jew, and they go back as Jews,
I think they
not
do
just as
though.
Israeli, right?
Well, we now have synagogues in Israel that are populated by American, by the veterans of American summer camps as shlichim. they're the rabbis in those synagogues. They're the members of those synagogues.
Right.
So yeah.
So, but your point about, and I've said this to my own daughter, who, Talia, obviously, Louis, but I've said to her, I said, next summer, I don't want you doing an internship. I want you going to camp, and I want you working at camp. I think it is really important life skill. And to your point, also, it's that gap is getting longer and longer between graduating from high school. And for many kids, this is why Jewish camp is so important. They need to continue to go to camp post B'nai Mitzvah, even if, I always encourage and strongly encourage parents to stay involved in their synagogue. But if they're not going to Jewish camp is really critical in those summers. And then staying on staff for as long as it makes sense. Obviously, at some point you have to go on to school, to graduate school if you want to, or some other profession. But that period is important. So, Louis, I know we don't have much time left, but I wanted to kind of shift. We're blessed in Texas to have two vibrant Jewish overnight camps. We have Camp Young Judea, which I believe was founded in the 1950s. And of course, Greene Family Camp, which is now celebrating this summer its 50th anniversary, which is just a huge, huge milestone. And you've been a part of it since almost the very, very, very beginning, right? So I would love to know, Louis, first of all, obviously you can talk about what does it mean for Greene to be celebrating its 50th, this incredible milestone, but how has Greene and CYJ to an extent, how has Jewish overnight camping in Texas transformed for us, Texas, Oklahoma, and specifically Austin, Texas, and kind of where do you see it going? Where do you see that important kind of influence of Jewish overnight camp going, and how can we better support camps as an Austin Jewish community?
Well, I think we talked about some of it. The fact of the matter is that it's going to continue to build the community by teaching young Jews what it's like to be older Jews. How do you support the community? Why should you belong to a synagogue? Why should you support the Federation? All of these things aren't going to change as society gets even more, at least short-term crazy. It's a good source of stability. And it's a way for Jews to be together in support of community when a lot of the world seems to be moving in weird directions vis-a-vis Judaism and vis-a-vis Israel. So it's going to be I believe it's going to remain, and even more so, be an anchor to the American Jewish community. To take, as I said earlier, to take Americans and turn them into Jews, it's going to keep that thing rolling. It's going to keep that trend going. And it's one of the only institutions that I see that's going to keep that trend going. I don't know what you know about synagogue membership, but it doesn't seem to be exploding at this moment in time. And there needs to be institutions that keep the ball rolling. And I think that camp is one of those things. Central Texas, in particular, Austin, has become a much more a much more important part of the attendance at Greene. I don't know about YJ, Young Judea, but at Greene, it's an immense part of our camper base. It's an immense part of our staff base, and it's that part of it is growing tremendously.
How many kids are at Greene?
Right now, I believe it is somewhere around for the summer, and we have year-round programs, but for the summer, it's 700 to 800 kids, I think.
That's
somewhere
a lot
around
of
there.
kids.
It's a lot of kids. The other thing that I want to just throw in there is that, we do Jewish things for people who aren't Jewish also. It's not only the rental business that we have, where a lot of people from local Texas campuses come to Greene. They're in the environment, even though they're doing their own freshman orientation thing. But I don't know if you're aware, we have housed refugees at Greene Family Camp, a massive amount of children who came across the border without their parents. We have housed them at camp. We don't make a big deal out of it. And I guess mentioning on a podcast makes it a bigger deal. But depending on who the administration is, like this administration won't be doing that. The previous administrations have. But we do good things for people. Not only Jewish people, we do Jewish things because we are supposed to do that. That's part of who we are as Jews, is to make the world a better place. And we try and do that through camp, primarily for our community, but secondarily for other communities.
Well, and I think, Louis, to your point, after Harvey, Greene set up a camp for the parents, or for the kids, parents, the family, so that the parents could clean out their houses. Right. I remember that Emmanuel, that Greene set that
Yeah.
up as like a pop-up. It wasn't a Greene Family Camp, but it was the
No,
Greene Family Camp staff.
we took trucks that we've had every
Oh, yeah.
single hurricane. We've housed hundreds of people during Ike and Rita who came to camp, and we housed for free. During Hurricane Harvey, as Dan was mentioning, we took trucks down to Houston and set up an entire day camp for thousands of kids. Didn't have to be Jewish, thousands of kids, so their parents could deal with the hurricane. We took care of the kids all day. During Hurricane Katrina, we loaded up. We played supermarket sweep at Sam's and took a bunch of trucks over to Camp Jacobs, where they had shelter for all the people that were coming up from New Orleans. And the URJ actually, for months afterwards, ran a warehousing operation where we would take goods in and then distribute them out to the community. So, camp is a part of the community in lots of ways that first of all, many people don't know about, but that touch on the Jewish commandment for tikkun olam, to repair the world.
It's beautiful.
One more question, Louis. And this doesn't necessarily relate to the Jewish part of being a camper, but I think overnight camp in general, Jewish or not, is really important in the development of of kids, and development of the parents being away from the kids for a couple months. But could you talk about that from a director's standpoint of just
Sure.
how much overnight camp just helps these kids grow?
Yeah, I think that there are a number of things to say there. The first thing to say is that, parents are the most important part of their kids' development, but they're not the only part of their kids' development. When you come to camp, you explore different skills and different elements of who you are, whether you're a staff or a camper. I mean, I learned to play guitar when I was 8 years old in a Jewish summer camp. I wouldn't have thought of that if my counselor hadn't put a guitar in my hand and say, "Hey, try this." They sign up for things that they never would have thought of doing. You have these jocks in the art room. You have women on the sports field doing flag football that they probably wouldn't get a chance to do in school. You just have people push their boundaries at camp. You can fail because you're in an environment that supports failure. I mean, we don't go for failure, but the fact is, there are friends around you that are going to prop you up if you do something wrong. You can make a fool of yourself at camp. That's part of the job of a staff member, is, getting dressed up in ridiculous clothes and getting water poured on you. But the fact is that you explore parts of yourself that you don't get a chance to explore outside, because you are who you are outside. You're your child's parent. You're this school's student. You have all of these roles that are thrust on you and are painted on in concrete. And at camp, you don't. And I think that that's one of the reasons why camp is so great as a child development tool. You get the chance to do things you normally would not think of doing or get the chance to do. That's a lot of what we're in business for.
All right. The last question is, what's your hopes and dreams for Greene Family Camp as it celebrates its 50th anniversary?
Well, to go from strength to strength, but most especially to go lador vador, from generation to generation. I mean, the greatest thing for me as a camp director was watching the 8-year-old camper turn into the 30-year-old parent of a camper. And for that parent to come to me and say, "What do I do? What do I do?" And for me to say, "Well, what would you have done, as a staff member? What would you have wanted to have done as a camper? To watch these kids. First of all, it's every parent's dream. May you have children like you. For a camp director, that repeats itself ad infinitum. We're always having children who become adults and parents. And my greatest wish is that continues, and that it continues more and more and more positively as we go along.
Well, first of all, and Matt will have the last word in a second. I just want to thank you, Loui, for your leadership, and the ways you've transformed our community and the communities throughout all of Texas, Oklahoma, and beyond. I mean, you talked about Israel and the number of people that have come into the camp. You have been a true leader, and have transformed Jewish life in North America and beyond. So thank you for all of your leadership.
Yeah, for sure. I was just doing the math in my head. 700 to 800 kids. You've been there for more than 40 years. Now, the kids don't go for just 1 year, but you must have seen, like, I don't know, thousands of kids come through that camp. Like, the math is like 30,000, but it's not quite that high. It's probably more like 10,000.
Well, there are 30,000 in our
legacy.
database.
Yeah, that's what the math says, right? So that's an incredible legacy to leave, especially, like, and I thought, like I said, I'll bring it back to Dan Senor where I started this, right? To bring it home to the fact that these kids, this is what is defining their Jewish identity. I mean, I'll even go to pop culture, right? Nobody Wants This. Did you watch that on what was it, on Amazon? I think
it was on Netflix.
Netflix, yeah, right. And I mean, Jewish camp plays a prominent role in that show. It's hilarious, but, like, I mean, look at what it's done. I mean, clearly the writer must have gone to Jewish camp, right?
Yes.
Thank God camp can be hilarious.
Which is great. It's great. And Matt knows this. And Loui and I were talking this before we started recording, but overnight Jewish camps is a major priority for us to invest in as Shalom Austin, in terms of making sure it becomes more affordable as costs go up, that more and more people in our community have access to camp, whether it's through the One Happy Camper program, which is an incentive-based scholarship program, or needs-based scholarships, that there's no barrier to accessing these important immersive Jewish experiences.
Yep. I think we can leave it there. Thanks, Loui. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening here at the Rabbi and the Other Guy.